Welcome to Rico 12. I'm Justin B., your host and a child of an all-powerful and perfectly loving God and an addict living in the miracle of recovery one day at a time. Rico 12 is an open to all addictions and afflictions organization. We're dedicated to exploring the common threads of the differing manifestations of alcoholism, sharing tools and offering hope from those walking a similar path. We gather from diverse backgrounds, faiths, and locations to learn and support one another. Our speakers come from various fellowships and experiences, demonstrating the universal principles of recovery. Rico 12 is not allied or affiliated with any specific 12-step fellowship. This is Rico 12 speaker meeting number 363. We've been doing this since 2020 and every Friday at this time, and I just am so grateful to have you joining us live or in the recording later. Today's speaker is Damian. And he is a first-time Rico 12 speaker, and I'm so grateful and excited to hear from him today. His talk today will be entitled Recovery and Relationships, and I look forward to hearing more about this message in a few minutes. But first, a few announcements. Rico 12 offers a variety of recovery resources, including podcasts and social media communities. To explore more, visit rico12.com. That's RECO12.com, or check the chat and show notes for links. And I'll be posting stuff in the chat throughout this meeting. Rico 12 is self-supporting, and your contributions help us continue this message. Thank you to all our Spearhead donors, past and present, especially this last week to Kimberly and Lila, who, by the way, let me know of a different and more convenient platform for people living internationally to donate than PayPal or Venmo, and that platform is Wise. So we now have Wise as another way that you international spearheads can donate if you wish. Links to that will be in the chat and the show notes and on the website at rico12.com. Your support truly does make a difference. If you'd like to contribute, visit us there at rico12.com/support, or check the links that I'll put in here. Every bit of support, financial or through word of mouth, helps us share these messages of recovery. Each week, we receive light and inspiration from our speakers. Their experience brings hope, meaning, worth, and growth to us as listeners. Now let's welcome today's guest speaker, Damian. And Damian has prepared an intro, and I'll turn the floor over to him to introduce himself and to share. The floor is yours, Damian.
Thank you, Justin. Appreciate it. You've stopped sharing, I think, so I can go, what's going on here? Doesn't look like it's going to happen for me. Need to go there. Oh, no, I can probably go to computer. For some reason, I've got the wrong thing up. Anyway, we might not have to have the film. I'll try one more time. It's asking me to select a video, which is interesting. Okay, maybe I can. No, let's forget it. Okay, so we won't have the video, Justin. I'll because I can't get it up for some reason.
Just go ahead and introduce yourself and get us going.
Thanks, so Damian. I'm Damian. I'm a recovering addict, and I'd like to welcome everybody, my fellow intelligent agents, spearheads of God's ever-advancing creation. It's an honor to come here and speak at Rico 12 and meeting 363, as we just heard. So I did have an opening video. It was a bit of a history about myself. So back in just after the Berlin Wall fell in around 1990, I headed out from Australia to Europe with an Australian independent folk rock punk band, and we hit Amsterdam, and we had some concerts arranged and gigs arranged in and around Europe. 3 days after me arrived, I'd already had some addiction issues in Australia, mainly marijuana and trying and experimenting with magic mushrooms, that sort of thing. Hit Amsterdam, and then tasted my first hit of cocaine 3 days after arriving in Amsterdam, and then my true addiction started to take its form and started to shape its way in my life. Went through various periods, ended up working on a market in Amsterdam using around about 3 grams of cocaine a day. Eventually re-migrated back to Australia with my then wife and 2 children, and thought I'd do a geographic detox, had to clean things up. Then I suddenly found myself with a 3-year crystal meth addiction. And then eventually my wife got homesick. Detox from crystal meth, did a home detox, told my wife about everything, went into what I thought was recovery, which was denial at the time. Then headed back to Amsterdam. As I said, my wife was homesick. And then back in Amsterdam, of course, things came back in my pathway, back into cocaine, and eventually started using crack. Then back in around about in 2020, I got offered a job here in the French Alps, again, thinking I could do a geographic detox from Amsterdam into the French Alps. Found myself here, was clean for 3 months. Eventually, my disease started to take shape and form again, and eventually had a very wild health crack addiction that created lots of havoc. Finally, I was started doing work for a syndicate here in the French Alps that were selling and supplying this area of the French Alps. I live in a prominent ski winter sport area close to Chamonix, Chambéry, which are Courchevel, which are highly visited, and with lifestyle, the rich and famous. So they were supplying these areas. I was a mule transporting cocaine from Brussels into the French Alps. Did that three times. Then on the fourth time, was arrested 10 minutes from my home with 3 kilos of cocaine. Suddenly, my life was turned upside down. So in May 2023, I was arrested here in France. I'd travelled and I collected the 3 kilos. As I'd mentioned, I was a mule. After my arrest, I was charged. I wasn't sentenced, so I was sent to jail, where everything and all of a sudden became very dark in my head, and my 30 years of addiction came knocking at the door. It was with the grace of God that I was pulled out of this darkness through of the darkness of my thoughts, and I remembered the times where there was peace and serenity in my life. I remember the times back when I was a teenager and I connected with God through prayer and meditation. So in prison, where I was locked up in an 8-metre square cell with 2 other cellmates, only to be let out 1 hour a day due to our status and the fact that we hadn't been sentenced yet. We're only in charge, so we're still under investigation. Only allowed out of the prison cell 1 hour a day. I tried to block out the noise in the prison and the noise in my head, and I started to pray and find some peace through prayer and meditation. Fast forward 9 months in prison, and I was released. And after being granted home arrest with an electronic monitoring, electronic bracelet, I went online when I got home and looked for a way to connect with others, to pray together with other people. And I came across one of my fellowships that I do a lot of service work with, and attend a lot of their meetings. And that's a fellowship called Catholics in Recovery. It's a fellowship that welcomes all faith walks, all addictions, and understands the foundation of recovery using 2 important things, and that is the 12 steps of Alcoholics Anonymous and daily contact with blessed sacraments. So it was here that I was introduced to 12-step recovery. Knew nothing about it in the past. So straight out of the prison, then I introduced to 12-step recovery through this fellowship, and I was introduced to the clear-cut directions of the Big Book. And I was connected with a sponsor and started a real pathway to recovery, thinking in my head that I only had to recover from one addiction, and that was crack cocaine or narcotics, drug addiction. It wasn't until I started working the steps that I realized there was a deeper and darker disease raging in the background, feeding my drug addiction, and that was lust. And I then became aware that I was 100% a mad dog sexaholic. So if you need a recovery, I would like to also make a big welcome to you all. I hope and pray that one day you'll find what I've found, and most of all, find peace in your life. And as the Big Book states on page 85, a daily reprieve contingent to the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So as I mentioned, I've got 2 home groups, CIR, Catholic in Recovery, and I'm also with another SA fellowship called Recovery Continues, an online virtual recovery meeting that's daily, 365 days a year, online. And that's also one of my home groups. I've got a sponsor, and I'm also sponsoring others in Lust Recovery, main focus with Lust Recovery. That's enough about me. Now to the topic of the day that Justin chose, and that was recovery and relationships. So I'd like to hone in on that. For me, the most important, it's one of the most important things in my recovery is to constantly work steps 10, 11, and 12. For me, most important in my recovery and in all my relationships is a summary of a line that is on page 63 of the big book. And it simply says, he provides what we needed if we kept close to him and perform his work well. So I summarize this daily, and I remind myself this daily in all forms of my day, almost as a prayer. Stay close to God, Damo, perform his work well. So let me now take some time to break down what I see as the importance of recovery and relationships. I'm going to break it down into various subcategories. So firstly, the problem in relationships before recovery, or my problem in relationships before my recovery. Before recovery, my relationships were selfish, distorted, or avoidant. I didn't know how to love without lust. I didn't know how to love without control. And I didn't know, and riding under all of this was I didn't know how to love without fear, the fear of being found out. So as the big book tells me, selfishness, self-centeredness, that we think is the root of our troubles. And for me, it certainly was. And that's from page 62 of the big book. I was driven by self-will. I expected people, especially romantic partners, to meet my needs only, and the needs that God couldn't fill. For me, I didn't even have a God. I was playing God. So as the big book reminds us on page 60, each person is like an actor who wants to run the whole show. That was me, 100%. I was just trying to run the show in every forms, every way possible. So trying to script my relationships, trying to manage outcomes while hiding the truth of my addiction. I wasn't capable of real intimacy. I was just only capable of feeding my addiction. So from this, I acknowledge my disease, that my disease is twofold. I have a mental obsession and I've got a physical allergy. And as I've learned from the doctor's opinion, the mental obsession starts with a phenomenon of craving. So it starts a phenomenon of craving. And in chapter 5, I've also learned in how it works that I will also have a spiritual malady. And this is something I recognize daily, and I remind myself daily. And I think it brings me always back to step 1 in my powerlessness and my manageability.
Throw it out.
Perfect. Yep. Thanks very much, Justin. So then I'm going to go to the next part, which is hitting rock bottom in relationships. My bottom wasn't just about acting out. It was about being rationally bankrupt. So I was totally bankrupt from all emotions and all feelings. I had betrayed trust, manipulated emotions, and sabotaged connection with any of my fellows, friends, and families. The big book reminds me on page 30, we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were alcoholics or sexaholics. This was the first step of recovery. So I had to admit that. I had to admit rock bottom. I had to admit I couldn't live or love rightly. Fear, lust, and self had become my masters. I could not fix this through willpower or through better communication skills. I needed a spiritual solution. I couldn't love properly. I didn't know how to love. I had to learn the basics of how to be in a relationship once again from new. I'm just going to. Thirdly, the gift of surrender. Thankfully, I was given the gift of surrender through recovery. The turning point was surrender. Surrender was this was really the turning point for me. And as we learned on page 59 of the big book, we stood at a turning point. We asked for his protection with complete abandon, and that was my point of surrender. I surrendered not to just my behaviour, but my entire way of being in relationships, my demands, my fantasies, my control, and even my belief that I knew what love was. In early recovery, I was guided to take time away from romantic involvement. This was through a sponsor, to focus on healing and learning to relate to others and to God without lust. Some of my distancing from my relationships wasn't my own choice. It was also the choice of my partner, my wife at the time, who's still my wife. We're going through a separation, but this is only benefiting myself and my relationship with God, which I'll talk about more later. So we learn on page 88, we let God discipline us in the simple ways we've outlined, and that was something that I had to also surrender to and accept. And also in step 10, which is of course is in step 11. That's part of the step 11 text. But I'd like to break down a little bit more this gift of surrender in more detail. So the gift of surrender, especially the importance of that with healing in relationships. SA has taught me that the starting point of all healing, especially rational healing, is surrender. There's nowhere in the big book is written the word surrender. SA love to use the SA fellowship loves to use this word surrender. But for a lust addict, it's an important part of recovery. The big book might not write the word, but it is vital in each of my 12-step foundations. It's important for me to surrender every moment of my day to what is vital in my recovery. My constant connection in all parts and all aspects of my life to God, my relationship with God. So this is most important. And as the book tells us, half measures avail us nothing. In each of the spiritual principles that I try to live out daily, I also reminded of my surrendering to God. So once again, the word surrender is not formally written anywhere in the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous. If you do a 164 check on the website, nowhere is it to be found. But the concept of surrender is central to 12-step recovery and to its message, especially regarding recovery through 12 steps. It's most clearly illustrated in the stories, the personal experiences, and the explanation of step 3. Of course, step 3 being made a decision to turn our will and our lives over to the care of God as we understood him. Complete surrender. This turning over is essentially the big book's way of describing surrender. That's how I see it. A spiritual act of letting go of self-will, letting go of control, and denial in favour of trusting a higher power, in favour of trusting God, in favour of having a relationship for first and foremost with God. Here are a few keys from the big book that reflect the understanding of surrender, surrendering to a relationship with God. So step 3, once again, I turn my will and my life over to the care of God. He's going to take care of 5 pertinent parts of my life: my finance, my legal status, my health, my family, and once again, which was the topic of the day, my relationship entanglements. So breaking that down a little bit more, that surrendering and what the big book says, and in regard to step 3, I'm going to look at admission of powerlessness, letting go of self-will, the step 3 prayer and spiritual awakening through surrender. So admission of powerlessness. On page 30, the big book quotes, we learn that we had to fully concede to our innermost selves that we were sexaholics or lust or alcoholics or addicts. This was the first step of recovery. The delusion that we were like other people or presently may be had to be smashed. Beautiful text from the big book. This conclusion is an act of surrender, accepting that reality is that one cannot control their addiction through their own willpower alone. This next part, letting go of self-will, from page 62, I learned that selfishness and self-centeredness, that is we think is the root of our troubles, and for me it most certainly was. And above anything, we alcoholics had to be rid of selfishness. We must, or it kills us. So it's also surrendering, giving it over to God. Surrendering means abandoning the belief that self-reliance will solve the problem. My self-reliance on me would certainly not solve any problem. The third step prayer I find really beautiful. It reminds me also of surrendering and connecting to God, which I find is really important in a relationship, that relationship with God. God, I offer myself to thee to build with me and to do with me as thou wilt. Relieve me of the bondage of self, so that I may better do thy will. Take away my difficulties, so victory over them may be a witness to those I would help of thyself, thy power and thy way of life. May I do thy will always. That's beautiful third step prayer. And the first few opening lines, God, I offer myself to thee. God, I surrender myself today to you. This prayer is a direct expression of surrender to God's care and direction, a one-on-one relationship with God. That's what I want, a one-on-one relationship with God. Then again, still on surrendering, and that for this last part, the spiritual awakening through surrender. And that's what I long for. That's what I found through my 12-step recovery. So from the doctors, from the story, the back of the big book, Dr. Bob's Nightmare on page 81, we read the lines, your heavenly Father will never let you down. Wow, what a powerful message to be told in a relationship with God, that he's never going to let me down if I just turn my will over to him, if I surrender to him. So Dr. Bob describes his own surrender, not just as giving up alcohol, but as complete reliance on God for life and for his direction. This is something I try to do also daily. To recover, I had to surrender my right to lust, my right to manipulate, my illusions about what love is supposed to look like. In early recovery, I was advised to take a break from any romantic relationships. Why was that? Because actually I didn't know how to show up in R1 yet. I didn't know how to. I had to learn that again. My motives were still contaminated. I needed to learn how to be with myself, and most importantly, how to be with God, and before I could be with anyone else in a healthy way or in a healthy relationship. Of course, after surrendering and having connected with God for the first time and giving him my all, giving him my time, my energy in the form of a serious relationship, and that was through prayer and meditation, by listening to God, by talking to God, I could finally move on and start my new process, and that was working the steps 4 to 9, of course, and starting to rebuild connection with others. The steps are a pathway to a rational transformation, and this includes also a rational transformation in relationships. So with the grace of God, step 4, I look at my resentments, my fears, and my harms that I've done to others. Much of my inventory was about relationships where I'd used others, where I'd lied, the constant lying, and where fear had run the show. And as the big book says, we reviewed our own conduct over the years where we had been selfish, dishonest, self-seeking or frightened. And that's page 69 of the big book. And then in step 5, I admitted these truths out loud to my sponsor and to God, and the intimacy and that connection began to grow. Not romantic intimacy, but emotional honesty. And as the big book says on page 75, we pocket our pride and go to it, illuminating every twist of character, every dark cranny of the past. Steps 6 and 7, of course, I began a deeper spiritual work, not just avoiding bad behavior, but allowing God to change me into a different kind of person. That beautiful 7-step prayer, my Creator, I am now willing that you should have all of me, good and bad. I pray that you now remove from me every single defect of character which stands in the way of my usefulness to you and to my fellows and to you. Grant me strength as I go out from here to do your bidding. So that 7-step prayer reminds me also of my surrendering to God, but also reminds me about my importance with my connection to others. Grant me the strength to connect with others, Lord. Give me that power, give me that mercy. Or give me that grace, give me that mercy. Not the power, give me the grace, give me the mercy. So yeah, that's steps 6 and 7. And then steps 8 and 9, I make amends to the persons I have done. And this is a beautiful way and pathway back to my fellows, to my family, my friends, my loved ones, my brothers and my sisters. Most importantly, through my faith walk, what I've learned to understand to my neighbours. So, and as the big book tells me on page 83, we clean house with family, asking each morning in meditation that our Creator show us the way of patience, tolerance, and kindness and love. In some case, this meant making a living amends. And in my case, I've got two daughters, one 25, 27. And after my jail sentence, coming out of jail, I contacted them. I'd love to make an amends with you. And they simply said, Dad, we're just not ready for it. We don't want to do that now. So I don't want to hurt them anymore. The door's still open. Who knows what God will give me and what graces I'll be given. But so daily I make a living amends in honour of them and in trying to connect back to them and trying to find that pathway back to them. So with all that said, I'm going to slowly close out and summarise a few things. So relationships in recovery. Today, recovery has given me a new vision for relationships. The vision not based on lust, not based on control, but based on God, humility and service, that service being such a vital part, seeing God in everybody. God is reflected in all those I come into contact with daily. Big book tells me we cannot be cured of our disease, our alcoholism, but we really have a daily reprieve contingent on the maintenance of our spiritual condition. So I can have a daily reprieve. I can find peace, joy, and serenity if I just stay connected to God, perform His work well. So relationships are no longer what I can get; they're all about what I can give, and that's for me so important. What I can give in love, what I can give in service, what I can give to God for God's will. And the big book also reminds me on page 84, love and tolerance of others is our code. So this applies to romantic relationships, to friendships, to my family, even to my work relationships. If I keep recovery first, everything else has a chance to heal. And I really feel that. I feel that God's love is helping me heal. The challenges, but there are challenges that still arise for me. I still face fear, lust, pride, and the urge to isolate or to control things. But I've got to give up and surrender this daily to God. But now I have now I have certain tools. I've got specific spiritual tools. When I am triggered or feel discontent, I turn to prayer, I turn to inventory, I reach out to others, and I reach out for God's will. And the big book reminds me on page 86, we usually conclude the period of meditation with a prayer that will be shown all through the day what the next step is to be, and that we are given whatever we need to take care of such problems. And I'm so blessed with the 11th step, those pages 86, 87, 88. That's setting up that foundation for my next 24 hours, how I need to stay connected to God, how I need to see God in all people who I connect with. Sometimes the answer is honesty. Sometimes it isn't, it's setting boundaries. Sometimes it's letting go. Recovery doesn't mean perfect relationships. It means a real relationships. For the first time in my life, it means real relationships. And those real relationships could be flawed, they're human, but they need to be guided by spiritual principles and a spiritual understanding. So I've got a new vision for love. I no longer look for a person to save me. I already have that. I've got the higher power. I don't need someone to complete me. I've learned to become whole with God. I'm right-sized. And then to share that wholeness, that right-sizedness with others. Page 84, we have ceased fighting anything and anyone, even alcohol or lust. For by this time sanity will have returned, and I really feel that sanity has returned. Love, for me now, is showing up, listening, telling the truth, keeping my side of the street clean, and letting go of any outcomes or trying to control the show. Conclusion, in closing this off, If you're new or struggling in relationships, remember recovery comes first. Without it, all our other relationships are built on shaky ground. Don't chase relationships, chase God, pursue God's love. That's where that all starts. That's where you can spread his love to others. You can share in that love. Give that love to other people. The love that I feel, I could try to give as much as possible to other people. The love that I feel from my high power, I try to give to as many people as possible. Real intimacy flows from honesty, humility, and my spiritual surrendering. Finally, we are sure God wants us to be happy, joyous, and free, and I believe in that also. That it comes from page 133 of the Big Book. So that includes with all relationships, those I come into contact with, and those who have that, who reflect that daily image of God. Everyone indeed, but it starts with letting God be the first person that I have that relationship with. From there, all other relationships can grow. So thanks for letting me share. And so with the grace of God and his blessings that I could share this message to you all. Thanks very much, Justin.
Thank you so much, Damian, for that share and for walking us through your story, walking us through your experience, strength, and hope on recovery and relationships. You know, as you were coming close to the close, you stated something that really stuck out to me, and I'd like to have you dive into this just a little bit more in your story, if you wouldn't mind. And what you said is recovery doesn't mean perfect relationships; it means real relationships. What does that look like to you in your life as you've moved away from the hope for the perfect, for the connection that cures all of your ills, to a real relationship?
Well, from my experience, I don't forget the past, nor do I wish to shut the door on it. So from my period of leading up to my arrest, I was involved with a company here, especially came here to work for a company, had a really well-paid job here, but saw ways that I could actually defraud that company. I ended up stealing from them €80,000 in which it's a fraud conviction that has already been passed through the courts, and that was to really feed my addiction online, on chat sites and on internet, connecting with others, being lusted and wanting to be lusted after, and so through that I've really learnt that certainly I will need to remind myself. But what I love about recovery and working with sponsees and hearing others people's experience, strength, and hope in recovery rooms is the great reminder of what God's love can give us. The damaging past of all of us in recovery, but how that's a great reminder of where I've been and where I am now, and the connection that I have with people and those relationships that I have with people, and just being able to listen. I really enjoy listening to other people's stories, not trying to fix them. That's God's work, and that's the pathway they're on themselves, trying to find their progressive victory over lust, or their daily reprieve. What works for them might not work for me, but it's just also taking the time to listen, taking the time to pause, and that's also really important for me with prayer and meditation. Just taking the time to pause to listen. Yeah.
Hmm. Yeah, thank you, Damian, for going through that. A reminder to our live audience here, if you have a question for Damian, you can type it in the chat. If you would like to remain anonymous, in other words, if you don't want me to read your first name, please send it to me directly, or in that message, just write anonymous, please, and I will ask that question that you may send in. I've got another question for you. You know, you talked about, let's go back to your time in jail. I assume that's your rock bottom, where you're there for 9 months and you're just trying to figure things out. Looking back to the person you were when you went to that place versus the person you are today, what are some specific differences that you see in yourself? What has changed in yourself between then and now? Got questions about addiction, recovery, or just life in general? Let's noodle it out together. Grab your big book, a pen, a highlighter, and a notepad, and join Nikki M and me Justin B. on Rico 12 Noodle It Out with Nikki M. Each episode, we take real-life questions, ours, yours, and those from the recovery community, and dig deep into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous to find real, practical solutions. So, if you're ready to do the work and apply the solution, tune in to Noodle It Out with Nikki M, streaming now on your favorite podcast platform.
Yeah, what's changed? Wow, a lot's changed, Justin. Okay, so good example is, so I've been in this state of the fraud case is now closed. I've got a criminal conviction. I'm not allowed to leave France until the end of 2027. With that, that's the terms of the parole. So I've been waiting since my arrest to be called up to the courts to get my final conviction and final sentencing for the drug trafficking. So that's also surrendering and giving it over to God, not trying to manage everything my way like I used to, and trying to relax and take it easy, just one day at a time, and a lot of focus on one day at a time, and a lot of focus on healing, connecting with my local community as well, with the parish and service within the parish. I serve also at the local food bank, work there 5 mornings a week, and I do other work for other members of the parish as well, and that's as a daily reprieve. But yeah. So now what I've been waiting on is my final court hearing this week. Actually, Monday this week, I got a nice 126-page document in the mail where all the statements were outlined from the five of us who were arrested and have been convicted or have been charged with certain convictions. So that came in the mail. That was a real blast. That was a real knockback and remembrance of the state of my disease, the state of my drug addiction, and my acting out as well. But now so now on the 26th of September, I'm going to be standing in front of the judge. And that's something also that I'm giving over to God and not trying to manage the outcome, not trying to, I'm letting God's will be done. God's will be done. That's, for me, is most important. Let God's will be done, and let God take care of business for me. Yeah.
No, that's really, thank you for sharing that. And I think this is important to drill here for just a minute before we jump back into a relationship question. What role does fear play in where you're at today, and how do you surrender that fear, and how often do you have to do that?
Yeah, that's a lovely question, Justin. It's a lot of this is something I talk about a lot with my sponsor, and also with my sponsees as well. We talk about it a lot. Dealing with it, I think most of the time I talk about it a lot with God. Through my prayer and meditation, when I wake up, throughout the day, doing a 10-step. When fear starts knocking at the door, and fear can really spark up that phenomenon of craving, that the allergy of the obsession of the mind that starts to kick in, and thinking, oh yeah, I remember when that. I used to just have to be able to block that out and use the internet and connect with others on internet to escape from any sorts of fear. So now it's really, whenever that moment comes up, it's really acknowledging it, seeing it as a character defect, and then praying and giving it up to God as much as possible. And if that doesn't work, then I'll most definitely, especially in early days of my recovery from my sexualism, from my acting out, from my lusting, it was a process of maybe making 10, 15 reach out calls and surrendering it to someone else vocally. But now, thankfully, I've got the spiritual toolkit, and I've got a bit more of a foundation where I can surrender that fear to God, and I can, and everything sort of, everything gets, the pause comes back into my day, the connection with God comes back into my day. And I'm reminded again, Justin, I'm reminded again, okay, Damo, this is a good chance. Get out there, help others. Get out there, help others. Get out there, help others. Find God in other people, and help them also recover, or help them in any means possible. Just stop sitting inside my head. Help others. Service. Yeah.
Good. I think that's a cure to almost anything. Get out there, get outside of my own head and go out and help somebody else. All right. Next question we have is from an anonymous member of our live audience here. This person says, can you please talk about recovery from sabotaging relationships and opportunities, like sabotaging opportunities? Do you have any experience or thoughts about that?
Wow. Sabotaging relationships, sabotaging opportunities. Yeah. Recovery around, well, I've sabotaged all my relationships that I've been in. I'll be really honest. All of my relationships, except for my first relationship, except for my first marriage, have been with webcam girls. So this is this was something where I really sabotaged them. I acted as a playboy, that I threw a lot of cash around, a lot of money, to get their attention, and to sabotage them into thinking that they were in a relationship with someone who I really was not. So they actually entered into my disease, and they were part of the tornado and the wreckage that I left behind. And unfortunately for my current wife, who is now living with her, we're separated, so I'm living alone. But unfortunately, she was probably a major part of the wreckage, and for her, it was a real shock because she knew nothing about my addiction and knew nothing about me, how I'd sabotage an institution or my work. But yeah, so sabotage is a huge. It's lovely to think about that. I've never thought about it in that way, but how I've sabotaged people, sabotaged relationships, and sabotaged others to get what I wanted. So yeah, I've got to be very aware of that. Um, uh, yeah, I think it was God's will that he finally said, "This is enough. You've had enough of a good run." And it was 30 years of a good run where I was just only self-centered and running on self-will. So that was that culminating point where I was blocked away, and then finally could look closely at myself and see, wow, this is actually really crazy, the way they've been living, and that sabotaging other people. Yeah, lovely question, really nice, a lovely word to think about.
Thank you, Damian, for diving into that and exploring that with us. That's very helpful. I want to stay there for just a minute because you mentioned your current wife that you're currently separated from. What are some things that you're learning about relationships and about yourself during this separation period?
It's pretty. That's yeah. For me, of course, we have daily contact. We're very good friends. She actually comes here once a week, once a fortnight, to use a studio space. She sells vintage clothing online, so she's got a studio space that she needs to work out of here, and she's got all her stock stored here. So we've been through, but I've had to make an amends with her. Of course, there are times when issues from the past will arise, and she will um, yeah, verbally uh, have to express that towards me. In those moments, I've really got to um, look at my step work, look at my foundation of recovery, turn towards God, just make sure that I don't. That I try to be show as much humility as possible, show as much love and understanding as possible, and try to also understand that this is a relationship that I need to restore. That as much as we're not together anymore, we've got a friendship. We're never going to have a sexual or a sexual relationship anymore. But I'm probably not ready for that either. So yeah, it's with especially with my wife, it's a matter of just understanding the pain she's going through, the pain she's suffering from, and trying to help her heal as well. With other aspects, with other members of my family, my mother, I've disclosed everything to my mother, so we have now also a very close relationship, both with honesty and a spiritual pathway. So we pray together each day. We talk each day. My mother lives in Australia, so it's all through WhatsApp, which we talk on WhatsApp, and just with in general relationships all around me, my fellowship in my local community. It's just trying to be right sized and just trying to be as humble as possible, be understanding as possible, and listening to their needs and trying to do God's work to help them on their way in their daily life also.
Thank you, Damian, for going into that. All right. Next question from another anonymous attendee here. This person says, how do you find the motivation, will, and energy to do all the work, the service work you're doing, and the recovery work? Hey, Spearheads, if you're looking to dive deeper into the big book of Alcoholics Anonymous with people who live the solution, then you won't want to miss RICO 12 Big Book Roundtable. Join David G., Nikki M., and me, the moderator Justin B., 3 recovered addicts from multiple fellowships, as we break down the big book line by line. In each 30-minute episode, we share our experience, strength, and hope in a real, raw, and practical roundtable discussion. So, if you are ready to learn and apply what you learn, tune in to RICO 12 Big Book Roundtable on your favorite podcast platform.
Well, for me, it's really important. Otherwise, I'm just going to isolate. So, the moment I wake up, it's there is some. I do create some space in my days, so especially that I'm connecting with God and give Him the attention that He needs. Where do I find the energy? The energy I think I find through God. I really believe that. I find peace and serenity through doing God's work, and as much as I've got a lot of members of my main fellowship, my main home group, Catholic in Recovery. They're mainly based in America, so they don't usually wake up until about 2 p.m. So I've got that period up to 2 p.m. After 2 p.m, my phone will get pretty hot. And especially with the contact with my sponsees, but also other service workers. That's also any newcomers, trying to help them on their pathway to find a sponsor, understand the importance of 12-step recovery, what our fellowship has to offer, the importance of also them not isolating. So as much as I'm taking calls, I'm also trying to make other reach out calls to connect to others. And there was something I learned in one of the recovery rooms that was all about. It was a journey through the big book from Joseph Olber, and one of his big messages was the God Squad. We need to have a God Squad, so 5 people who we stay always connected to throughout our day, someone who they might hold us accountable, that sort of thing. So yeah, my God Squad's also very important to me, connecting with them, staying close to them as well. And I think most importantly, God gives me that energy, and that God gives me that grace to perform service work and continue that daily. Yep. There are times it's difficult, but yeah, that's that. Then I just have to surrender that to God and find peace and serenity in peace and serenity through prayer and meditation.
Good. Thank you, Damian. All right. Another question from our audience. How do you avoid falling into anorexia, meaning sexual anorexia? I tend to think I am in a healthy place, but then find I am just asleep or hiding away from sex and love. And then again, my
Mm,
needs come up because I'm human and they get woken up by an unhealthy addict. So talk to us about your experience
very, very
with
nice
this.
question. Wow, sexual anorexia. I'm 100% sexually anorexic, and I often think, oh, maybe that's probably easier than that's probably helping with my sobriety with my lust addiction. So with SA have a very specific sobriety definition. So we can't have any sex with partners or anyone else. We can have we no sex outs. If I'm not in a relationship, then there's no sex outside of that, or no sex with myself or with others, except the spouse. So that's the specific sobriety definition of SA. So yes, yes, I'm very aware that I am sexually anorexic. I've got a lot of fear about physical contact with intimacy. It's a big fear. It's something I don't know how to do without drugs. Something I don't know how to do specifically without drugs because with drugs I loosened up and I could become someone I wasn't. So I could easily push away the truth and the reality about who I really was. So yeah, sexual anorexia is a big issue for me, and I often think I've got an easy way out because I am sexual, but that doesn't mean I don't have fantasy, I don't have lust. I have to be really conscious of that, and there have been moments in early recovery that, of course, I really struggle with that. But now I'm really just trying to find a healthy pathway first where I can grow. Um, by learning about who I am, understanding love, the importance of love, and also understanding love without lust. So, be trying to understand and grow, and learn about yeah, learn about loving others without that physical lust and lust. It's an interesting question. It's There are times when, of course, yeah, it could easily go a different way. But I've got to remember that I am an addict. I've got to remember my twofold disease. And I've got to remember my spiritual melody, and I've got to ensure that I can maintain that daily reprieve contingent of my spiritual maintenance. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing that, Damien. And yeah, I like how you walked through that and talked about the definition of sobriety in SA and and what that looks like. So thank you for sharing that with us. Okay, next question is also from an anonymous attendee. This person says, "Would you please talk a little bit more about setting boundaries in relationships and what you do when those boundaries are not respected?" Or if those boundaries affect your recovery. Maybe a few examples or experiences if you have anything like that.
Yeah, okay. So setting boundaries. Had to set lots of boundaries with old relationships, especially with one easy thing is losing your telephone. No, that's the easy way out. But a lot of contacts from the past, especially drug based relationships that I had. I had to set boundaries. So just total uh, deleting those numbers, not even not even trying to come into contact with people who are who who still are using uh, or still, just in certain places, locations. I've got to be. I've been through a period where that's very important. Uh, so yeah, setting boundaries with relationships it's a good question, very good question. How do I do that mainly? I just have to also uh, think about and acknowledge what's important for me. And I think the biggest boundary that I create for myself is not to get involved in arguments or discussions. I keep a lot. I definitely don't get. I'm not influenced. I don't watch the news. I sort of distance myself that with the news. It's God. I think it's God's business. There's your business. There's my business. So that's also important. I think most important tool is that I don't look and I don't try to get involved in discussions or arguments. Like set a clear boundary in relationships. If that's happening, then you will usually pray in some form the sick man's prayer, which we have, I think, on page 64 of the big book, if I'm correct. Just going to flick over there. 64. Yeah, 67. There we go. The sick man's prayer, which is a great reminder. Hey, Damo, you're also sick, mister. Don't forget that. This person who is you maybe need to set some boundaries with. He's sick, though they're sick, but you are also sick. Don't forget that, mister. So that's probably what I'm just very aware. If things are going in the wrong direction, contact with people is going in the wrong direction, then my boundary is maybe, okay, this is a clear point where I don't want to continue this discussion, or I'll 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 I'll, I'll end it in a respectful manner, but I won't go into deep discussions or arguments with them regarding trying to solve a problem or trying to play God. That's probably it. Thanks. Jason. Yeah.
Yeah,
Nice question.
thank you,
Nice question.
Damian. Yeah. So next question here may derail this, but I think it's pretty funny personally. So you mentioned you don't watch the news. And before we started, we were listening to some music, and you said one of the favorite songs of one of your favorite songs was being played, "The Only Living Boy in New York." One of the lines is that I get the news I need from the weather report. Is that kind of something that jives with you?
It does indeed. Yeah, I like that. Yeah, it does. Very nice, Justin. Yeah, that's it. Um, yeah, I think most important for me is what's happening around me. That's enough news that I need. I find, uh, yeah, and I hear about it in recovery, and it's that people are really influenced by what's going on in the world. And that for me is just a way of maybe blocking that connection with God. I mean, I'd love to fix the problems of the world, but that's very difficult for me. I need to first fix myself or stay connected with God. And I think, God's will for me is to help others as much as possible. So, I do hear snippets from it, like especially from my wife. She might tell me what's going on, or she might inform me about something. And but yeah, daily listening. Definitely, Justin. I'm happy to walk outside and then see what the weather's like. That's news enough for me. That's what the day is going to turn out to be, or whether the sky looks like it could rain, or yeah. I also try to look in the day with the weather. I certainly try to look for God, higher power selfies. So if there's something beautiful while I'm walking my dog, the beautiful snow-capped mountains and the Alps around here, and the way the seasons change. Wow, what a beautiful way and what a beautiful power God's will works through us and around us, and in that connection with the landscape and the surroundings. Yeah. Yep.
Excellent. Yeah, thank you for that. So as we start closing out here, do you have any final words of wisdom for us, Damian? Hey, Rico 12 Spearheads. If our recovery resources have helped you, please consider a donation. Your financial support, as well as your word of mouth support, keeps Rico 12 running and reaching the man who is still sick. Donate today at rico12.com/support, or check the show notes for PayPal and Venmo links. Every contribution helps carry the message. Thanks for being a Rico 12 Spearhead.
Yeah, probably that text, and if anything, stay on page 63, which was something that was taught to me. Stay on page 63 of the big book. There's a lot of answers there. The bottom of page 62, those top of page 63, the third step prayer, and then of course on page 63, it's got that one line which
Let's get the sound back here.
Is that better? Can you hear me now?
Oh, and we can hear you now. All right. So you're looking at
Okay.
page 63. Stay in there.
Yeah, I was looking at page 63, and that's that one line and that mantra that I say to myself daily: stay close to God, perform his work well. And that's that one line. He provided what we needed if we kept close to him and perform his work well. So all before that third step prayer, the power of God and giving him my life and my will over to God in every possible manner in every part of my day. Thanks. Yep, that's probably it.
Excellent. Thank you so much, Damian, for an amazing Rico 12 speaker meeting. If anybody here in the live audience has additional questions for Damian or you'd like to ask the general audience, please consider joining our WhatsApp community and posting those questions in there, and we can, answer those with our experience, strength, and hope. If you haven't done so yet, please consider going to rate the podcast, Rico 12 Speaker Meeting Podcast on YouTube. I'm sorry, on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It's a great way to work step 12 and share recovery with others. And next Friday, we will hear from Kathy C., another first-time Rico 12 speaker. Her topic will be no middle-of-the-road solutions. I had but two alternatives. I'm looking forward to that. This is going to be good. So continue to... You can follow us on our email list. You can send me an email at rico12pod@gmail.com to get on that. And you can join us on the WhatsApp community and be kept up to date with all of these things. So now as we wrap up, let's wrap up with a long version of the Serenity Prayer that Damian's going to send us out with.
So a moment of silence for the recovering addict inside the room and outside the room. A moment of silence for all of those who couldn't be with us today also. And who kept us sober today? God, grant us the serenity to accept the things we cannot change, the courage to change the things we can, the wisdom to know the difference, living one day at a time, enjoying one moment at a time, accepting hardship as a pathway to peace, taking as you did this sinful world as it is, not as we would have it, trusting that you will make all things right if we surrender to your will, so that we may be reasonably happy with you in this life and supremely happy with you in the next. Amen.
Amen. Thank you so much, Damian. Remember, everybody, there is one who has all power. That one is God. May you find God now. Keep coming back, and when you do, come all the way in, sit all the way down. Let's trudge this road of happy destiny together. Work it. You are worth it.
There was a man put his hand by the side of his mouth, and he wanted to scream, but the sound never came out. So he reached for the bottle to wash the pain away, 'cause what he wanted so badly was to live a different way. And all of his problems and all of his pain filled up the puddle and rose with the rain. His ship kept on sinking to the bottom of the lake. For certain that he was just a fake, just a fake. Was a man put his hand by the side of his mouth, and he wanted to share, but only lies ever came out. So he reached for the needle to numb the pain inside, that he yearned for shriveled up and died. And all of his problems, and all of his pain filled up the puddle, rose with the rain. Ship kept on sinking, bottom of the lake. He knew for certain that he was just a fake, just a fake. There was a man put his hand by the side of his mouth as he read from the book, only truth spilled out. So he reached for a power to help him through the night. 'Cause what lives in the darkness dies in the light. Yeah, what lives in the darkness dies